10 members of the Pathways International Kingdom Restoration Ministries pleaded guilty to breaches of the Disaster Risk Management Act earlier today in the St. James Parish Court. They were fined a total of $1,170,000 or 20 days imprisonment. Meanwhile, in the Home Circuit Court in Kingston, Andre Ruddock, the member of the Pathways International Kingdom Restoration Ministries, who is charged with murder, will be assigned legal aid after he declared in court that he was unable to afford a lawyer. Now, Ruddock appeared before Justice Vinette Graham Allen earlier today. The matter was put off until next week, Wednesday, November 3, as he had no legal representation. Director of Public Prosecution, Paula Llewellyn, represented the prosecution and had this to say regarding today's court proceedings.
Well, Mr. Ruddock made his first appearance before the court in the Supreme Court in Kingston. I preferred the voluntary bill of indictment, which charges him with the murder of Tanika Gardner, and the judge has assigned him legal aid counsel. One counsel who was in court very graciously indicated to the court that she was prepared to accept an assignment, and the learned judge indicated that, given the circumstances, she believed that it would be prudent to assign an even more senior counsel as well to lead this counsel who was assigned in court today. So the registrar's representative was asked to write to the legal aid counsel to make sure that that senior counsel is assigned and will be present in court next week, Wednesday morning, when the matter comes back before the court.
Now, Ruddock is accused of the murder of 39-year-old office worker Tanika Gordon on Sunday, October 17. Gordon and an unidentified man's throats were slashed. The allegations are that they were sacrificed in a cult-like ritual. Several other members at the event were also injured. Ruddock was expected to be tried with the pastor of the church, Dr. Kevin Smith. Smith, however, died in a car accident on Monday while being transferred from Montego Bay to Kingston. In the meantime, following Smith's death, it is reported that the Pathways International Church was vandalized between last night and this morning. A large contingent of police officers were on the scene to secure the premises. We will bring you more on this story in subsequent newscasts. Still tonight, Chairman of the Police Federation, Corporal Rohan James, today gave our newsroom an update on the injured police officers that were involved in Monday's accident that claimed the lives of Kevin Smith and Corporal Orlando Irons.
Our colleagues who were injured in the accident on Monday were visited at the hospital, and so far the reports from the medical practitioners are that they are responding well to treatment and they are making progress in terms of the treatment being administered. So we are hoping for a full recovery, though it appears that their injuries will take a bit of time to heal. But we are hoping for the best in their recovery process.
Continuing with the news tonight, the no-movement days that have been in effect for the last 6 Sundays have been discontinued by Prime Minister Andrew Holness. Mr. Holness says the curfew will now run from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. daily, beginning on Friday, October 29.
Starting on Friday, October 29, the curfew hours will be from 8 p.m. nightly to 5 a.m. the following morning for every day in the week up to 5 a.m. So basically it's all 7 days. For all 7 days, 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. the following day. So everybody So that is, remember, I had said in my last presentation that we're going to try to create some guardrails so that these are not very restrictive on the path of the road, but there will be outer bands, but consistent. So you can plan. You can have a little bit more certainty. And we're going for a longer period, so instead of 2 weeks, you would have seen that we're going for like a month or so with these measures. So that just that people have certainty. So there would no longer be a no movement Sunday or a no movement day. This new curfew will remain in effect until the 10th of December, 2021. I will have some consultations with interest groups, and I will definitely call up the leader of the opposition early so that we can have a consensus as to what to do in Christmas. So this is the holding position for Christmas.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Holness says physical events held by public entities are now limited to 50 persons and noted that these events must be strictly controlled as they're only open to people who are vaccinated.
There are no changes to the gathering limits at this time. The general public gathering limit remains at 10 persons. Places of worship will continue to be restricted to having no more than 50 persons in attendance. No crusades, conferences, or conventions are permitted. There is also something this is also something we intend to review again in 3 weeks, along with the curfew hours. The number of persons permitted to physically attend a wedding remains at 50. The limit on persons physically attending annual general meetings remains at 50. Physical attendance at events hosted by public entities is limited to a maximum of 50 persons. And Madam Speaker, these events that are held by public entities are to be controlled events, meaning that the space within which the event is kept, all the protocols must be observed, but it is not a free access space. And the reason for that, Madam Speaker, is that attendance at these events must be for the vaccinated only. So Madam Speaker, in this order, public sector entities that are putting on events must first determine the vaccination status of those who they are inviting to attend.
The existing work from home directive in the public sector remains in place until December 9, 2021. Mr. Holness says, as a precursor to returning to work, permanent secretaries and heads of agencies must ascertain the vaccination status of staff to facilitate risk assessment. Mr. Holness says all banned countries have been removed from Jamaica's travel list.
In relation to our entry protocols, based on the recommendations of the Ministry of Health and Wellness, we are removing all banned countries from our travel list. So you will recall that the bans had been placed on those countries, most of them, if you recall, India and South America. Trinidad was on that list. But this was because of high infection rates and concerns about new variants. These countries have, however, Madam Speaker, controlled their outbreaks and have very high vaccination rates. If you look at all of them, their vaccination rates are higher than Jamaica's vaccination rate. So there's no, including Brazil. In fact, Brazil has a very high vaccination rate. So it doesn't make sense, Madam Speaker, that we're banning countries that have brought their infection rates under control and have higher vaccination rates than ours. The pre-testing requirement for persons traveling to Jamaica to present a negative COVID test within 3 days prior to travel remains in place. Madam Speaker, I am pleased to report that we have significantly overhauled and simplified the travel authorization application process through JamCovid and Visit Jamaica platforms. We have reduced the number of questions and increased the speed of approval.
In the meantime, Prime Minister Holness has announced a partial resumption of face-to-face classes beginning on November 8.
To ensure that our secondary level students are prepared for their external exams, we have granted permission for the grades 11 to 13 students to be engaged in limited face-to-face activities to include preparation and completion of labs and practical assignments and all activities attendant to the registration for their external examinations. These will be done in small groups using a rotation schedule as guided by the COVID-19 protocols. Madam Speaker, these activities are time-bound and had to be allowed.
The Prime Minister says the requirement that 65% of the secondary school population be vaccinated will remain in place in order to return to face-to-face learning. At the primary level, 376 of the over 750 schools will be allowed to return to limited face-to-face classes without the need for vaccination. Mr. Holness says this will be done through a risk assessment.
We will look at the enrollment of the school's utilization rate, that is the number of students enrolled versus the number of spaces at the school, the number of COVID cases in the respective communities in which the schools are located, access to water for drinking and sanitation purposes, accessibility to technology, meaning internet connection, and the average distance traveled by students in commuting to and from school. So those are the factors that will give the risk profile of the school. Combined, these factors provide a total risk score that the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information has used to objectively determine the level of risk associated with each school and their consideration for approval for the resumption of face-to-face teaching and learning.
The Prime Minister is urging Jamaicans engaged in the education sector to get vaccinated in order to protect themselves and their students. Meanwhile, Mr. Holness is warning the country that it should expect an increase in COVID-19 infections due to the reopening of schools. However, he believes the government will be able to manage that risk.
What we are doing is trying to manage the risk. What is the risk of our students staying out much longer and the risk of the rise in numbers? There's no perfect and easy solution. So we believe we can manage the risk of outbreak by strategically allowing some children to go back and putting in place a measure that allows vaccinated students where vaccines are accessible. That is also a method of managing the risk of outbreaks.
In tonight's COVID-19 update, Jamaica recorded 50 new COVID-19 cases and 8 virus-related deaths, increasing the total of confirmed cases on the island since the outbreak to 88,530 and the confirmed deaths to 2,192. The new cases comprise 24 females and 26 males, ranging in age from 1 to 90 years. According to the Ministry of Health and Wellness, 17 of the cases were recorded in Kingston and St. Andrew. 15 cases were recorded in St. Catherine, 5 in St. James, 4 in Hanover, 2 each in St. Mary and Westmoreland, and 1 each in Manchester, Portland, St. Anne, St. Elizabeth, and St. Thomas. The ministry said the latest deaths were recorded between August 25 and October 25. The latest victims are a 32-year-old female from Trelawney, whose death was previously classified as under investigation, a 71-year-old male and a 54-year-old female from St. Catherine, a 91-year-old female and a 59-year-old male from Kingston and St. Andrew, a 63-year-old male from St. Anne, a 66-year-old male from Portland, and a 58-year-old female from St. Mary. The ministry further reported 238 new recoveries, increasing the total of recovered persons now to 57,182. There are 28,553 confirmed active cases on the island. As we continue with the news tonight, The National COVID-19 Vaccination Operationalization Task Force held a press conference earlier today during which it provided full details on its responsibilities and objectives. Here is Kelleen May with the details.
During today's press conference hosted by the National COVID-19 Vaccination Operationalization Task Force, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Port Authority of Jamaica and Task Force Chair Professor Gordon Shirley explained the responsibilities and objectives of the task force.
The remit of the task force are: one, to optimize the operational and logistical aspects of the vaccination program from end to end. That is, from appointment making to queuing and walking, all the way through to the vaccination and post-vaccination information collection and management. A second, and our objective there is to assist the Ministry of Health and Wellness by providing some suggestions for how that might be enhanced. Our second mandate or remit is to develop and oversee the implementation of recruitment strategies for doctors and other health professionals to expand the number of persons who are available for the national vaccination program. A third is to meet with and encourage various sectorial groups to participate in the national vaccination program and to oversee the administration of public-private partnerships to administer vaccines. And so, in this regard, we have been working quite closely with the private sector vaccination initiative on a number of projects, and we are very pleased to see again that some of those are being implemented as we speak. We have a responsibility to create a national dashboard, and finally, we have the responsibility to facilitate the implementation of an unambiguous authentication system for vaccination.
Professor Shirley explained that uninformed frontline workers should advance their vaccination take-up of their members, as they are the ones mostly interacting with the general public daily.
We think that the other frontline workers, like the JCF, and the other uniformed forces, like the fire brigade, these are critical frontline workers that have to interface on a day-to-day basis with the public. We believe that they should follow in the footsteps of JDF. In this case, we understand a vaccination rate of over 90%, which is, we think, probably one of the highest in the country. We think that there are other private sectors that we need to have a concerted effort. In tourism, for example, tourism has been the most open of our sectors and have restarted. But in many cases, the tourism vaccination rates, in spite of programs with the private sector vaccination initiative, have leveled off in the 50s and 60%. There are, of course, instances where you will get a hotel with 90%, but on average, they are in that region. In the cruise industry, for example, now that we are opening up, the Ministry of Health has said that the employees at all attractions should be 100% vaccinated. That's going to take a lot of effort to get there, but we think that that is something that the sector has to put its mind to, and to collaborate with the Ministry of Health as best as we can to get as close as we can to those targets.
Colonel Markland Lloyd of the Jamaica Defence Force and member of the task force in answering questions outlined the COVID-19 authentication system that will be used for events.
For us to have a sporting event, first of all, we have to be able to confirm that all of the persons who have indicated that they are vaccinated are in fact vaccinated, and that is a part of the authentication system that we're seeking to put in place. I do believe, however, that we do have an opportunity to authenticate the persons who are interested in joining at any one of these sporting events prior to having the authentication system in place, because we do have a very comprehensive database of persons who have already been vaccinated. So once somebody comes with their paper card, we can go through the Ministry of Health system and authenticate those persons who indicate that they are vaccinated prior to them entering any venue that is being made available for whether sport or whatever activity. Now you ask whether or not it has to be limited to sport. No, absolutely not. The same level of authentication that is being used at sporting event can be used wherever else that permission is granted for events to be held. And so I anticipate that once approval is granted for us to be able to take this step into allowing this proof of concept or beyond the proof of concept, then we will be able to successfully authenticate persons and allow only vaccinated persons to access whatever venue it is that has been approved for operation.
President and CEO of ICD Group and a member of the task force, Peter Melhado, explained the budget for the digital vaccination card development and maintenance.
The system is for everybody in the database. So every Jamaican who has been vaccinated, and we have a record for, which is everybody, yes, we would make it available to all citizens. The idea is in the first phase of the rollout, it will be used mostly for domestic purposes, so mostly to authenticate for, like Brigadier spoke about, events. Even some folks may require it for office entry, public buildings, etc., as we've seen overseas. But the second phase is very important as well, which is to allow Jamaicans to travel when we believe what's going to happen is there's going to be a digital regime, if you'd like. So much like your passport has a digital identifier in today's world, similarly, when you travel, you would have some QR code, something generated with what they call a public key, which is some certifying agency within the government saying, yes, this person has been vaccinated, this is his vaccination record, and we stand behind it. And that would be your access to travel. So even though many countries have announced that after a certain date there will be travel restrictions around vaccination, presently only the EU, the European Union, has started this digital protocol. But we expect over the coming months that many other countries will adopt it as well. So it's really important for Jamaica. We're traveling people. We like to move up and down or on an island. So it's very important we keep pace with the technology and make sure that when that time comes where, to go to the US or to go to Canada, you need this digital certification, we'll be ready for it for all of our citizens.
Reporting from Mellow TV News, I'm Colleen May.
Thank you, Colleen, for that report. In other news tonight, residents of St. Elizabeth are being encouraged to travel with their government-issued identification and a TRN card as the health team will host a vaccination drive this Friday, October 29. The team will be in the town of Santa Cruz at the Transportation Center from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The team will be offering the Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccines. Persons who wish to use the opportunity to get their second dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine should take their COVID-19 vaccination card. Still making the news tonight. Law enforcement officers assigned to the Halfway Tree Police are appealing to the relatives of a deceased male to come forward, confirm his identity, and claim his body. The man was killed in Crossroads, Kingston 5 on July 8. The police reported that an identification card found on the deceased gave his name as Shay Green, 36, of Barbican Road, Kingston 6. Reports coming into our news center are that at approximately 5:30 p.m., Green and another male boarded a coaster bus and demanded money from the driver. The conductor, upon seeing the altercation, ran from the bus. He was allegedly chased by Green along the roadway in the direction of Carib 5. The bus driver reportedly reversed the bus into the lay-by when Green turned and ran toward the bus. He was hit by the door, fell, and was run over. The driver alerted the police and Green was taken to the hospital where he was pronounced dead. Mr. Green's family or anyone with information that can assist in having his body claimed by a relative is being asked to contact the Halfway Tree Police at 876-926-8184. And that's our news package for you tonight. Thank you for tuning in to Mellow TV Evening News at 8. I am Shelley Ann Hill. Do stay safe and pleasant viewing.